looked human, but the shape of her hip didn't. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. But Lovejoy noticed something odd about the way the bones had been fossilized.
When I put the two parts of the pelvis together that we had, this part of the pelvis has pressed so hard and so completely into this one that it caused it to be broken into a series of individual pieces which were then fused together in later fossilization.
So you get the picture? It was originally, according to him, shaped exactly like a human pelvis, but something happened to it that like maybe squashed it, so it was like this, but once it got squashed, it looked like a human pelvis. And according to the PBS series, they know who squashed it. Deer. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think the deer are taking over. We got to stop them. I mean, they're running into cars. They're stepping on our most priceless fossils. Here is the deer foot actually stomping Lucy's hips. Now, I have to tell you what you're going to hear, because you're not going to believe it when you hear it. I just want to get you ready for this. Lovejoy is going to hold up this fossil of hip bones, and he's going to say the following: these bones fit together so well, they're in an anatomically impossible position. That would be like you going into a body shop and somebody telling you, you know, your front right fender fits on your car so well, it's not possible. And he has a solution that I think you will agree it no longer fits well when he's done.
This has caused the two bones, in fact, to fit together so well that they're in an anatomically impossible position.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost.
Yeah, that would be a buzzsaw or a Dremel tool.
Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly,
it fit
like
real
a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
What can you say? This is science. You can teach this in a public school. You just can't criticize it. That would be religion. Oh, things have gotten worse for Lucy. I hate to even bring this up, but just a couple of months ago, April of 2007, in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, yet another Lucy-type specimen has been discovered, Australopithecus afarensis. It's an almost perfect mandible with intact teeth, and it turns out it's a dead ringer for a gorilla, or very similar to a gorilla, very much unlike man or even a chimp. Their conclusion, this casts doubt on the role of Australopithecus afarensis as a modern human ancestor. Come full circle, huh? Well, let's let some evolutionists have a word here. This is David Pilbeam, very distinguished paleoanthropologist, and he had just reviewed a book on human evolution by Richard Leakey, in which Richard Leakey basically says, we're going to have to forget everything we ever thought we knew about human evolution. I found some fossils here that throw everything into a cocked hat. His reward for that was to be booted out of the whole field of human evolution. He no longer works in it. He's in politics now. He's an outcast. His wife, Maeve, still works in it, but not him. And this is what Pilbeam said after reading Leakey's book. My reservations concern not so much this book, but the whole subject of paleoanthropology. But introductory books or book reviews are hardly the place to argue that perhaps generations of students of human evolution, including myself, have been flailing about in the dark, that our database is too sparse, too slippery, for it to be able to mold our theories. Rather, the theories are more statements about us and ideology than about the past. Paleoanthropology reveals more about how humans view themselves than it does about how humans came about, but that is heresy. Can you imagine that? My friends, the reason this is all important is because if God created us in His image, then we are the people of His pasture, as Psalm 100 said. It is God that sets the absolutes. He sets the rules. He tells us how He would have us live, and above all has come to save us through His Son Jesus from sin and death and the power of the devil. He did not come to save apes or animals. But if you have ape in your past, your morality is relative. And isn't that what Satan told Eve? If you eat of the fruit of this tree, you shall become as gods, knowing right from wrong or good from evil. You can decide for yourself. It's man that sets the rules. And when people start setting their own rules, it can get a little scary. I was watching a program on TV a few years ago. There was a handsome young man, went to the University of Wisconsin, had this wonderful Wisconsin accent that I've always gotten a kick out of. He was very articulate, very bright, very with it, very collected. He's the kind of person I would think any lady watching would say, oh, I wish my daughter could find someone like him to marry one day. One little problem. We're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. This perfectly coherent, perfectly intelligent, attractive, bright guy said the following on the Stone Phillips show. If a person doesn't think there is a God to be accountable to, then what's the point of trying to modify your behavior to keep it within acceptable ranges? That's how I thought anyway. I always believed the theory of evolution is truth, that we all just came from the slime. And when we died, you know, that was it, nothing. It makes a big difference, friends, whether we began as a primitive being and over millions of years of bloodshed, suffering, and disease worked our way up by random chance and natural selection to man, or whether in fact we were created with initial perfection and would have lived forever, and with the fall into sin, it's in fact been a downhill slide, not an uphill ascent.